Chapter 6: The Hidden Valley. The campfire flickered as the desert wind whistled through the canyon, casting shadows on the faces of the travelers huddled around it. Old Hank leaned forward, his voice low and gravelly, as if the story he was about to tell was meant only for the ears of those who dared to listen. Out there, beyond the mountains and far beyond the reach of any map, lies a place folks whisper about: the Hidden Valley. They say it's a paradise, untouched by man. A place where the rivers run with crystal clear water, the land's as fertile as a dream, and gold's just waitin' to be found if you can make it there. But there's a reason no one ever comes back from lookin' for it. He paused, letting the silence settle over the group like a heavy blanket. Then, with a slow smile, Hank began his tale. The tale of Luke and Tom Callister. Luke and Tom Callister were brothers, as close as two men could be. They grew up on a small, hard-worn ranch outside of a town that had long since dried up, much like their fortune. For years, they had scraped by, never having much but always having each other. But like most men on the frontier, they dreamed of striking it rich, of finding something that would take them away from the dust and the toil. One night, after a long day of working the land, an old prospector came through town, speaking in hushed tones about a place he'd heard of but never seen: the Hidden Valley. He claimed it was a land of wealth and beauty, a place where a man could find everything he ever wanted, if only he could survive the journey. That was all it took to spark the fire in Luke and Tom. They made up their minds that very night they would find the Hidden Valley and claim their fortune. With little more than their horses, a map scribbled in the dirt, and their faith in each other, the brothers set out. The journey begins. At first, the journey was full of hope. The sun was warm on their backs, and the mountains on the horizon seemed almost inviting. But the deeper they ventured into the wilderness, the more the land seemed to turn against them. The path grew steeper, the ground rockier, and the dangers more pronounced. Wild animals lurked in the shadows, watching their every move. The air grew thin as they climbed, and the nights were colder than either had anticipated. Still, they pressed on. Tom, the younger of the two, was full of excitement, constantly urging Luke forward with talk of the riches that awaited them. But Luke, ever the cautious one, began to worry. The map they had followed was nothing more than a rough sketch, and with each passing day, it became harder to tell if they were even on the right path. The brothers' tempers began to fray as exhaustion set in. They argued over which direction to take, over how much food they had left, over whether the valley even existed at all. Tom, driven by the promise of gold, was relentless, pushing them further and further into the unknown. Luke, weary and wary, began to wonder if they should turn back while they still had the chance. It wasn't long before they ran into more than just wild animals and harsh terrain. Word of the Hidden Valley had spread, and they weren't the only ones looking for it. A group of prospectors, rough and desperate, crossed their path. These men had been searching for the valley for years, driven to madness by their obsession. When they found out Luke and Tom were headed for the same prize, things turned deadly. The test of brotherhood. One night, as the brothers camped near a high ridge, the prospectors attacked, hoping to steal whatever map or information the brothers had. A vicious fight broke out, and for the first time, Luke and Tom found themselves fighting for their lives, not just their fortune. With quick thinking in their bond as brothers, they managed to fend off the attackers, but not without cost. Tom was wounded in the scuffle, his arm badly injured. Suddenly, the dream of reaching the hidden valley seemed distant, as the reality of their situation set in. Luke wanted to turn back, to get Tom to safety, but Tom refused. "I didn't come this far to give up now," Tom growled through gritted teeth. "We're close, I know it." Despite his brother's condition, Tom pressed on, determined to reach the valley. But as the days passed and Tom's injury worsened, it became clear that the treasure they sought might not be worth the price they were paying. Finally, after weeks of hardship, they reached what seemed to be the edge of the hidden valley. Before them lay a vast expanse of green, lush and beautiful, just as the prospector had described. Rivers sparkled in the sunlight, and the air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers. It was everything they had imagined. But as they stood at the edge of the valley, something shifted between them. Luke looked at the beauty before them and felt only emptiness. The gold, the riches, none of it mattered anymore. All that mattered was that he and his brother had survived. But Tom, weak from his wound and delirious from the fever, saw only the treasure he had fought so hard to reach. As Tom staggered toward the valley, his vision filled with dreams of wealth, Luke grabbed his arm. "Tom," he said softly, "this isn't what we came for. This isn't worth your life." Tom stopped, his eyes wide with confusion. He had been so focused on finding the valley, on proving himself, that he hadn't realized what he was sacrificing. Slowly, his gaze shifted from the gold-filled dreams of the valley to his brother, the one person who had stood by him through everything. In that moment, they both understood. The hidden valley wasn't about gold. It was about the bond they shared, the strength they found in each other, and the realization that some treasures are worth more than any riches the land could offer. Old Hank's voice trailed off, leaving the travelers around the campfire deep in thought. The wind whispered through the sagebrush, carrying with it the weight of the story. "The Callister brothers made it back," Hank said softly, his eyes distant as he gazed into the flames. "But they never spoke of the valley again. Some say they found it and left it behind. Others say it wasn't real, just a dream that led them on a wild chase. But what I know is this: whatever they found, it wasn't the gold that mattered. It was something more. Something worth far more than any fortune." The fire crackled, and the travelers sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Hank smiled faintly, tipping his hat as he leaned back. "Out here on the frontier," he continued, "you'll find a lot of folks searching for something. Some are after gold, others redemption. But the real question is, what are you willing to give up to find it?" The campfire flickered, and the night stretched on, leaving the listeners to ponder what treasures they sought and what they would sacrifice to find them.